Recently, I've had a chat with one of my critique partners and friends, Anna, about our early days as writers, but we focus mostly on the times we used to be writing as teenagers and maybe late teens, early 20s. So the first few books we wrote, or even the projects that we never finished. And it made me really nostalgic, and it made me think about a lot of the projects I have written, whether finished, not finished, or even just outlining at the moment and thinking of writing them in the future. And I really wanted to do a video on first lines. So I thought, why not find all of my first lines from all of these different projects and tier rank them for you. This is going to be the awkward angle we work with so that I can see my screen and we can talk first lines. So I've made this tier ranking table in Figma just because I wanted it to look this way. And we have two things first. So first we have criteria for my first lines, just to decide where we would rank them. I've decided that what matters, and this is just very subjective, but my general criteria for classifying them is going to be the prose, whether it's any good, if it sounds okay, the tone, which I don't know what I meant by that. I just put it in there thinking, yeah, I need to think about the tone. And actually I think I mean voice, you know, it's more voice. Let's change that. There we go, already changing a thing. The genre, whether it's indicative of what genre we're about to read. The story and plot, again, these are all like, is this indicative of these things? Will we get a little glimpse of what the story / plot is going to be from this first line? Similarly, are we getting any insight into the character, like the main character from this first line, especially if it's in first person? Is it unique or original, which is often a criteria for good first lines? And is it intriguing? Like, does it make me want to read more? Would it make anyone want to read more? Next, we have our rankings. So at the very top, this will be the best lines, and I called it Hanging in the Louvre. As you can tell, these are sort of memes from TikTok, usually. So based on sounds that I've enjoyed, I guess. The second one right below, so still pretty good, is I like it, Picasso. You know, it's sort of like it's under Hanging in the Louvre, but it's still pretty good. The middle one is still, it's sort of like average but good. So I liked the sentence, do you feel bonita, for this, because I feel like it's unexpected but sort of nice. This is, we didn't think you would feel bonita, but maybe you do, because this is a good line. Underneath it, this is like the mediocre ranking. Let's go, I guess, question mark. And then finally at the very bottom, so bad, just bad. Why would a man be there? Anyway, here's my first lines. I have put them on the side here, and I've written these little things, so I can grab these and just drag them while, you know, holding options so it can copy it. I will give you a tiny bit of information about each project as I do. So, okay, so our first line is from Project Future. And to give you information, this was written in 2011. So this is the dates I could find. Some of these might be inaccurate, but I think this is from 2011. And this was an abandoned project. It's currently at 10,000 words. So I gave up on it after 10K, which is honestly not that bad for 2011. This is from 15 years ago. So I think I was 20 at the time. And I was in university, and this was the first time I started thinking I wanted to write again a little bit, but mostly I was just trying to avoid doing revisions for exams. That's how I remember writing these. So Project Future and Project Zombies have similar backgrounds, where both of these, university in my very early 20s, so I think both of these were 2011, so I was 20, and I was just procrastinating working on my exams, which is when I started writing again a little bit. Both of these were also written in French, and so I've roughly translated. Actually, all first lines are from projects that were written in French, so I tried my best to translate it. It's difficult to try and keep, I mean, I'm gonna have a difficult time rating the voice and the prose and things like that from this, because it's not exactly the same as it was written in French. So the first line from Project Future was, Ellie Hauser, I turn around, intrigued. Obviously, it's more than one line. I've also got in there, a young woman looks at me, a charming smile on her face, a recording device in her hand. A journalist, which I read in the tone of a child. So she doesn't like that it's a journalist. It gives us a bit of insight on the character. But the first line is technically just a dialogue line. It's just Ellie Hauser, and it's like just giving us the character's first name. It gives me nothing on the voice or the genre. I don't think the prose was bad, but it wasn't great either. And it just doesn't give me much on anything. So I kind of feel like it's bottom. Maybe Why Would a Man Be There? I might be harsh on my very first one, but I kind of feel like it gives me nothing. If anything, I should have changed these to Go Girl, Give Us Nothing. Actually, maybe I will. It's kind of Let's Go, I guess. I liked Why Would a Man Be There because this is truly a horrendous time. And I feel like it's not horrendous, it's giving nothing. And I feel like I want to change this ranking to Go Girl. Oops. Give Us Nothing. I feel like this is more accurate of probably how I feel about a lot of these lines. They're not terrible, they're just, it's giving nothing. So Project Future, I'm gonna put in here. Go Girl, Give Us Nothing. Project Zombie. Project Zombies was another one I wrote in French in 2011. I think my dates I've got is 2011, 2012. So I probably finished anything I was writing in it a year later, so at 21 years old. And it was 12,381 words and abandoned. However, I think it was more words than that because I was writing it by hand and then retyping everything on my laptop. And I think I've got more handwritten words that never made it onto the laptop version. So anyway, this was a girl who basically is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but instead it's zombies. So it was, you know, Buffy the Zombie Slayer. That's what this was. And the first line was, who doesn't dream of an apocalypse on the last day of their classes? And I kind of like this. I feel like the prose of it was like, it was okay. It had a little bit of voice, and I feel like the main character's voice, because this was a first person POV as well, this one was good from other lines after, which we're rating the first line, but I kind of feel like you can still tell her voice from it, and it gives me a little bit of insight into the character and into the story and plot, because we're talking about an apocalypse. It's giving the genre. It's kind of fun. It's a little bit unique. I actually think I like it Picasso, you know? Like, this is a good one. So I'm gonna put it here. Like, it's good. Anyway, the next line is from Felicie. And Felicie was, I mean, the full title I think was Felicie and the Witches of Brussels. But this was my very first fully finished first draft. So I never wrote more than one draft. I actually technically did some amends that led to a draft 2 in a way, but it's more like draft 1.2. I wrote this one in between 2017, 2018, and it is completed, draft 1, at 77,600 words, so not bad. It was my very, very first finished book. Very first, of all times. And the first line was crap, but I really enjoyed myself writing this book at the time, and it's the book that told me I could finish a book, right? It was the first one. It was also in French, and translating it was a little bit rough because I feel like the expressions I used were very French and not directly translatable. And I have a longer sentence afterwards that kind of gives more context, which is my problem in most of these first lines, is you need a second line every single time. And that's not what the first line is supposed to do. You're supposed to get it in the first line. So I will read you both lines and then we will recap on the first one. Felicie gave a quick glance to her watch at the exact same time a raindrop fell on the glass. Lately, the sky seemed to match her emotions. An hour earlier, there wasn't a single cloud in sight, up until the moment she received a cryptic message from her father. Ons at home, tea at 4. So this was kind of like the first paragraph, which is cheating. So if we're rating it on the first line, I don't think it's giving me much. We know something about the character, and we know something about the weather. That's about it. I feel like we have... The prose was okay, but it was not great. I'm not getting much in terms of voice, genre, story, plot, even the character. We just know her name's Felicity. There's no uniqueness or originality to the sentence, and it's not that intriguing. I'm gonna be really harsh, especially considering this was my first finished book, and I wrote it later than Project Zombies and Project Future. So I should have known better, but I clearly didn't. But I feel like writing about the weather in the first line, if it's not that interesting, is a little bit of a great offense. And I don't like it. So it's gonna be in why would a man be there? Why would the weather be there? Like, what are you doing? I'm so sorry, Felicity. You're going down at the bottom of the barrel. I apologize. I'm being harsh on myself. Okay, the next line is from a project I'm calling Dragon Slayers. It was also in French. It was also abandoned much earlier than the other two. I don't know if this even deserves to be in there because it sits only at 2,819 words. But this was essentially, after writing Felicity, my first novel idea afterwards. And so I was still trying in French, and I was like, I think I got quite a few notes of outline. So even though the words themselves are very little, I had a lot of ideas towards this book. I wrote down a lot of world building and lore. I knew where I was going with it. I just never wrote it. This was called Dragon Slayers, but like all of these books, by the way, are about teenagers. And all of these teenagers have powers and are special somehow. So this was the beginning, right? And I wrote those 2,800 words in 2019. And the first sentence is, I start to fidget in the car. It feels like the seatbelt is digging between my ribs, the heating burning my throat when I breathe in. I kind of really like the prose of it in French. It is in French, but the first few lines, I really liked how I wrote them. And I liked that it gave me a little bit of insight on voice and a tiny bit on character. However, it gives nothing on genre, story, plot. It's not super unique and it's not that intriguing. So I kind of feel like it's a Do You Feel Bonita? Like it's in between, you know? Like it's just sort of, it's average. Like it's got some good stuff, but it's not bad. I like the prose. I liked the slight insight I get into the character's mindset in there. So I'm gonna put it there. We're now gonna move to 3 different drafts of the same book. The Art of Summoning Demons, which I've made plenty of videos and content about. You may know it, you may not. The Art of Summoning Demons is my very first baby, in the sense that it's the first book I wrote in English. Not only wrote, but fully finished. Like it has 5 drafts in total. And we're gonna look at draft 1 and draft 2, which had drastic changes between them, and then the final draft 5, which was again the most evolved of the 3 of them. So the first draft, which I think was in 2019, so it was soon after Dragon Slayers, it's when I finally decided it's time to write in English. The first draft had a prologue, and this is the first line of the prologue. The old man stepped off the boat carefully, his pale skin glittering in the darkness. I feel like that first line was nice in terms of prose and voice. It doesn't give much in terms of the genre, story, plot, or character, especially main character, since it's a prologue about her grandfather who's dead, so we don't know anything about Olive. Is it unique and original? It is intriguing. I feel like it could be intriguing, a tiny bit. Like I would be like, okay, what's up? What's going on? But again, it's sort of average. It sits on the fence about it. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit Go Girl Give Us Nothing. Like, that's how I feel about this first line. Now, the second draft did not have a prologue anymore. And we get straight into Olive arriving in college. Olive didn't know much about hell, but if she had to guess, she'd have to say this was it. Now, I feel like this one had more voice. And I like that there's hints towards the genre and story, because it's called The Art of Summoning Demons and the first line is about hell. Even though it's a joke, she doesn't actually mean literal hell. I feel like this is working with these criteria. It's also giving me a little bit of insight into her character, because we immediately know that whatever we're about to read about, she hates it. So I like that. It's not very original or unique, but it is intriguing, because I feel like I'm wondering, what is hell for this person? So it's quite a, like, I think it's up there, you know? I feel like it's quite high up. I'm gonna put it in I like it Picasso. I like this one. Okay, and the final draft, the version that I ended with had a first chapter that sort of worked like a prologue, but was not a real prologue. It's just basically a couple months before the start of university, of college. She's burying her grandfather. So we went full circle. We went back to the grandfather who's dead. So that first line is, the sun beat down on Olive's thick black dress as she walked to the chapel, the path bordered by a mixture of lush green trees and slowly decaying ones. I feel like the first paragraph was more impactful if it was accompanied with the next sentences, which the full paragraph was this. The sun beat down on Olive's thick black dress as she walked to the chapel, the path bordered by a mixture of lush green trees and slowly decaying ones. September had marked the start of fall, the earth wrapping itself in its mantle of death. Summer had ended and the old man had died. And the summer had ended and the old man had died had a lot of success with my beta readers. This was their favourite line. I often got a comment about that specific line at the very end, and I almost even decided, should I switch them and somehow make this the first line? But I liked it as a punctuation to the first paragraph, and I feel like it's only 2 lines in, like it's 3 lines into the book, so it's not that far down that it's like no one's gonna read that far. So it didn't bother me that it wasn't the very first line. But the very first line being just this, it is about the weather, which as we've said was a great offense. However, I feel like this gives us so much more insight into everything. Like, we're talking about the main character Olive. It gives us a little bit of insight into her. It gives us a little bit of an idea about potentially the genre plot. Not much, but we know she's walking down a chapel, she's wearing black. Is this about death? And like the rest of the paragraph will cover more about that, the fact that it is about death. But it doesn't tell me that it's supernatural in nature or that we're going to have an investigation or anything of the sort. So that part, fail. However, I liked the contrast when I wrote it between the lush green trees and the slowly decaying ones, which was giving like life versus death. And so I really enjoyed the prose of this when I wrote it. For that reason, I think I'm going to put it in I like it Picasso. I feel like it's a Picasso, you know? It's pretty fucking nice. It's not up there. I'm not hanging it in the Louvre, even though I'm pretty sure there are Picassos in the Louvre, but you know, it's close. So next we have Night Shifters, which is, if anything, the title of a project for several books, several standalone romance. Like, I wanted to write paranormal romance books within this project, and this first book was about a character called Clem, like Clementine or Clemence. I wasn't entirely sure at the time which name she would get. Anyway, this is an abandoned question mark project because I could get back to it. I still have ideas for several books within this potential series that I never ended up writing. And I did write for this first one 6,200 words, and this was back in 2021. For a reminder, I forgot to give you the dates, but The Art of Summoning Demons Draft 1 was 2019. The second draft was around 2020, and then the final draft was 2025. So that final line is technically after, you know, a bunch of these. But Night Shifters was around the same time as draft 1 and 2 of Demons, and it was 2021. And this is another cheat where I have 3 lines instead of 1, but it's so short. There's a banging sound inside my head, or maybe outside. It's unclear. And this gives me nothing. It gives me a little bit of voice and like potential character. But we don't know anything else from this. And this is going to be a very quick decision. So it's not quite at the very bottom, but it's not giving much. So it's going there. Okay. Next we have An Office for Monsters, and I have 2 drafts for this book. It's technically draft 1 and draft 1.2, but I wrote draft 1 in 2022, and then I did a quick round of revisions, mostly line edit stuff and changing things that were in contradiction with one another, so really small edits in 2024, I think, or maybe 2023, a year later, I can't remember. The total word count for both of these, draft 1 was 107,400 words, and draft 1.2 was 109,100 words, so it gained 2,000 words when I revised it. First line of the first draft. It's not every day you get to solve your own murder. Now, don't get me wrong. This one is top tier, but it's just not accurate to the plot. But that came up later because I pantsed most of the book up until like the last tier of the book. So the first 2/3 of the book, I was pantsing my way through it, and I really thought I was gonna have like a whole, like, she actually does die and then comes back to life essentially. But I did that in The Art of Summoning Demons, and I was like, I can't do this twice. This is ridiculous. So I changed my mind. But at the time, for what it was, this is a hang it in the Louvre. Like, I love that first line. It was precious. It was great. It's not every day you get to solve your own murder. It's not that original, I won't lie. I don't think it's that original, but I feel like it's giving instant story, plot, genre, voice. It's not really giving prose. It could be in between, but you know what? I loved it, so I'm keeping it up there. The second version, I wrote, there had been no monsters that day. Now I'll give you the other lines that come after that because I did like it in the context of the rest. There had been no monsters that day. It had been surprisingly sunny and warm for the month of October. No one had been rude at work or stared in a weird way, and Rose hadn't been plagued by a single monstrous vision all day. And this gives me a lot more insight into the character, but the very first sentence doesn't. It's just, I think, unique. It's also not grammatically great. I don't like that there's a apostrophe D for had been. I don't think that's great, but I do think it's, like, this is an instant hint to the genre and the story and the character, and there's quite a lot to unpack in a tiny sentence. So I liked it for that reason, and I think I'm gonna put it, I like it Picasso. Like, I feel it deserves that spot. Okay, we're now getting to slightly more recent projects. Space Princess, I wrote in 2024. First draft completed, and it stands at 129,784 words. This is a space opera romance with sort of magical abilities and space vibes. I really like this one. Here's the first line. I once flew straight into a scattered meteorite with debris whooshing past my Class A Chasseur spaceship from all sides, yet there is nothing more terrifying in this instant than requesting an audience with my father. Now, I think I could improve on the prose, but everything else, I was super happy with this. I feel like that line is giving me voice, it's giving me genre, it's giving me story and plot, it's giving me character. It is, I think, original enough and intriguing enough. Like, you want to know why she's more scared of an audience with her father than of flying through debris with her spaceship. So this is top tier, I think. I'm putting it in Hang It in the Louvre. Like, I was real proud of that one. Next, we have Knights of Death, which is very wordy but not finished. It's technically sitting at 75% of draft 1, and I've got 100,069 words in it, so it's not done, but it had a lot of words. And I did outline the last part of it and some changes to the end, so I will need to go back at some point and do these changes. This is a paranormal romance reverse harem story, sort of like urban fantasy-esque in London, with a witch and her 5 Knights of Death who come from hell and are chasing down a lich that escaped hell. So this was written in 2024-2025-ish. Sure, I've seen what the Oxford witches can do before, but it's not the prowess of others that has my stomach in knots. It's my own lack thereof. I know this is cheating, but I feel like these are the same, it's part of the same package. They're like one sentence divided in two, you know? Like, it's the continuation of the previous part. Like, it's not the prowess of others that has my stomach in knots. It's my own lack thereof. Could I have like a comma here instead of a dot and it would still make sense? I think so. So I'm counting it as one sentence. Actually love this. I feel like this one had decent prose. It's got good voice. You can tell a lot about the character, the story, the genre from this one sentence. I think it's unique. I think it's got originality. Not a ton of it, but a little bit of it. Yeah, I think this one is top tier as well. Like, I was really happy with this one. So I'm putting it in Hang It in the Louvre. We do have a good few contenders there. I wasn't expecting to be this nice to myself. I thought I was going to be harsher. Rules of Survival is my current baby that I'm still in the middle of draft 2 for. I'm revising it at the moment. So I put down the date as 2025 because draft 1 was completed in 2025 at 91,000 words in total. And I've not changed the first sentence since in draft 2. And again, I feel like the full first paragraph is more interesting and gives you more insight into things. So the first sentence is, there's a few reasons I never travel to alpha tagged planets. But then the full first paragraph is, there's a few reasons I never traveled to alpha tagged planets. First, they're always infested with the most dangerous fauna and flora in the galaxy, hence the tag. And second, they attract the worst kind of money-hungry idiots from Earth too. I should know, I used to work for some of these idiots. I really like the first paragraph, but do I love the first sentence by itself? I feel like it's good. It's not fantastic. Like, it kind of gives you the genre, but it doesn't give you the tone or much about the story, or like we get maybe a little bit of insight about the character. The prose is fine. Like, it's just not extraordinary. It's not unique. It's a do you feel bonita, but I still like it because I actually really like my first paragraph and I don't want to change it. Because I feel like it's completed by it. So I'm just going to put it in do you feel bonita, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means it needs to be completed by the sentences that come after. All right, the next one, and actually the next 3 are projects that are in, you know, plot bunny states. So I'm thinking about writing them. Maybe I've got some notes in a project idea page on Notion, and that's it. Technically, Project Snowstorm, I do have the faint lines of an outline, like it's started, but that's about it. But let me still count them. So Project Snowstorm, the princess's palanquin has arrived. I don't know how to pronounce this word in English because it's a French word, palanquin. I don't think this is how you pronounce it in English, so I'm trying to Englishsize it when I do, and I don't think this comes out right, but you know what I mean. You can see it written. It's another one where I feel like it's nicer within the package of the rest, the next sentence. The princess's palanquin has arrived. I eye it warily from the summer house's windows, the red of the stained glass changing House Fane's white and gold colors into sepia tones. I like that better, but in reality, it's not giving me much about the story. It is giving me something about the genre and nothing about the main character or her voice. It's kind of average, if I'm fully honest. It's a little bit, like, it's not bad, but it's not giving a ton of information, but I think it's Go Girl, Give Us Nothing. There. Okay. The one after The Blood Witch is my crime scene cleanup witch project. And all I'm doing is pantsing it every now and then when I have a minute and having some bullet notes in it, but that's it. There's no outline. The vampire at the door doesn't seem too impressed with my appearance. I actually really like this one. I feel like this one has the voice and like the character information in there. Like, we kind of get a glimpse of who the main character is, feeling that way. It's providing some information about the genre and the story and plot as well, talking about a vampire. I feel like it's got quite a bit to it. It's actually pretty nice. It's also a lot more succinct than some of the ones I have placed before in Hang It in the Louvre. It works better that way, being succinct. So I actually think I'm gonna be super nice to myself with this one. I'm gonna put it in Hang It in the Louvre. I think it's that good. Yeah. I really like that first sentence. Okay. Last first line. Project Reborn, which is my latest plot bunny. I've just been reading a ton of manhwas isekai, which are basically transgression or regression stories. So stories where someone, usually from our modern world, gets transmigrated into a fantasy romance novel that they were reading, often as the villainess or a side character with no lines or something along those lines, and then they start changing the plot, changing the story, trying to save a character, trying to save themselves, etc. And they do become essentially the main character of this new story. I love these stories. They always have such similar tropes to one another, and they're really fun. And so I started writing my own little project with a similar vibe, but it's very much pantsed at the moment. It's in the middle of discovery writing. This isn't very far. Here's the first sentence. The stable attendant does not flinch. Here's the fuller first sentence because again it needs its friends. The stable attendant does not flinch. It is a credit to my hard work and dedication over the past 7 months that the people of the Von Thiel estate now welcome me in any room with a genuine smile on their faces, past worries of my tantrums now fully erased from their minds. This gives you so much more information about the plot and the story and even the voice and the character, but the sole first sentence without the rest of the paragraph gives me nothing. Like, it's actually bad. it's literally just like it's got nothing to it. I kind of feel like it's a why would a man be there? Am I that hard on myself? I feel like it's almost by itself, it's giving me nothing. I keep saying it, so it has to be in the second to bottom tier. It's mediocre. It's giving me nothing. Go girl, give us nothing. And there you have it. That's my final ranking, I guess. I'm glad to see there's only one that went down into the why would a man be there, which is Philly C. And honestly, I'm just offended at my own decision to make this about the weather. Now, to give you some context, her powers have to do with the weather. So this is why I started with that. But it just seems bad when you don't have the context. And the whole point of her first line is you don't have any context yet. So do you want to read the rest of this based on nothing? I do feel like I was quite generous with myself in the end for the amount of lines I have in the top tier of Hang It and the Louvre. I've got An Office for Monsters Draft 1, which I'm not using anymore, so I'm sad about it. I've got Space Princess, I've got Knights of Death, and I've got The Blood Witch. In I Like It Picasso, we have Project Zombies, The Art of Summoning Demons Draft 2, The Art of Summoning Demons Final Draft, and An Office for Monsters Draft 1.2. And I'm not mad at this because I feel like the reason for some of these lines to be there is simply because they needed the full impact of the first paragraph, the next few sentences and not just the first line, to fully get what this is about and to make it to Hang It in the Louvre. Which I don't think we should judge a book solely based on the first line, and we shouldn't also assume, because this is something people often say, that people will give up on reading the rest because they didn't immediately get pulled in by that very, very first line. Usually people will give it a couple more words, at least. So I feel like the I Like It Picasso ranking, they're good in my book. This works. Do You Feel Bonita? Similarly, I feel like Rules of Survival is kind of in between, and it's really just, if you have the full context of the next sentences, it could make it up there. Like, it's trying. And also, this is a draft 2. I haven't really done line edits yet. I may change my mind about that first line. We're fine. Go Girl, Give Us Nothing. I may have to revisit some of these. Project Snowstorm and Project Reborn in particular. If I know they're plot bunnies, they don't need to do much yet. But I do feel like it would be nice if they were in Do You Feel Bonita? So even just reworking a tiny bit the prose so that it's giving me something more interesting. Why would a man be there? Philly C. I'm so sorry, darling, but this was my very first book, fully finished, in French. I don't really plan on revisiting it, and if I did, it would be in English, so the first line would be different anyway. I would rewrite it fully, so I'm okay with it being at the bottom. But yeah, that's it. And that's it on first lines. I feel like that was really fun for me to do. I've enjoyed myself doing this. I'm happy with this final ranking. This gave me a bit of insight into my first lines and first paragraphs, because I feel like when I was doing this exercise, I was like, oh, but I really want to include the second and third line in the full paragraph because that's where you get the impact. This is what matters. But no, the game was supposed to be one line only. And I did cheat it even in a couple of places, so yeah. This is just a reminder that first lines are not the only thing that matters, and that most people will not actually stop at the very first line. It shouldn't be bad. I do think that if it's in the bottom tiers, maybe it's a good idea to rework them. It should be at least good in terms of prose and not so unoriginal, like She Woke Up type of vibes that no one wants to read what comes next. But if it's good enough, that's all that matters, because then people will read the next word and the next word and the next word, and before you know it, they'll have done the first paragraph, because that doesn't really take that long to read, and then they might make a decision on whether they want to continue reading or not. That's how I feel about it, not to excuse my own bad lines. But I've enjoyed doing this video, and if you enjoyed watching it, I would love to see your guys' take on it. If any of you make content and would like to do your own take on this, or even if you want to play around in the comments and let me know what your best first line is, what you would consider your worst one, or even just give me some of your first lines just like that, I'd be super intrigued and super interested, so please do. I would love that. And if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.